You know that moment in a movie, a Star Wars lightsaber snaps on,
Hmm.
or a Marvel hero just erupts with energy. You see that incredible pure glow. And when you see a firework explode with that same deep red, you probably just think, oh, something's burning,
Hmm.
like a match, right?
Well, if it were that simple, the sky would just be a sort of, a dull orange haze every 4th of July. What you're actually seeing in that split second is way more sophisticated. It's pure physics. We're talking quantum mechanics at an atomic level.
Wow.
And that's combined with chemistry that's been perfected really over 1,300 years.
That completely changes how I'll look at the sky. It's a quantum light show. Okay, so let's get into it. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are going all in on pyrotechnics. Our sources include an exhaustive literature survey on the chemistry of fireworks, plus another on their history and applications. Our mission: to unpack the chemistry, trace the wild history from alchemy to modern warfare, and tackle the really big environmental questions facing the industry today.
We're going from, ancient Chinese recipes right up to the cutting edge of green chemistry. You are going to be amazed at how much engineering goes into a single spark in the sky.
So let's start with the basics,
Yeah.
the recipe. If I want to build a star, and that's the little pellet that makes the light, right?
That's the one.
What are the absolute essential ingredients?
Okay, so every single star is like a tiny chemical factory, and it's built around 3 key parts. First, you need an oxidizer. That's what provides the oxygen for the fire. Historically, it was potassium nitrate, but, modern fireworks use much more powerful perchlorates.
Okay, so that's the oxygen. What's the fuel?
The fuel provides the power. We're talking about things like superfine charcoal powder, aluminum, or magnesium.
And I'm guessing the third part is what holds that whole explosive mess together.
Exactly. You need a binder. It's usually something pretty simple like dextrin, which is basically a starch. It just lets you mix everything with water, mold it into those little stars, and then let it dry into a stable little pellet.
Okay, so we have the star. But we need to get it into the air. That's the lift charge. Is that still the classic black powder we all learned about in history class?
It is. It's the global standard. Classic black powder is potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal in a very, very specific ratio, 75.0.15.
And there's a reason we still use that and not, I don't know, C4.
A very important reason. It's all about control. Black powder releases about 3 megajoules of energy per kilogram. For comparison, TNT is almost 5. It's 4.7.
So that's a deliberate choice. It's engineered to be less explosive.
Absolutely. It's a feature, not a bug. That lower energy gives you a controlled, fast burn, what scientists call a subsonic deflagration.
Not a high explosive detonation.
Exactly. The goal is to make a spectacular launch with sound and light, not to, create a shockwave.
Okay, so we've got this controlled burn launching the star. How do we get from just heat and light to those incredible specific colors? What turns a white-hot flame into, say, a deep, rich violet?
This is where the magic of quantum mechanics comes in. The heat from that burn, we're talking over 2,000 degrees Celsius, is pure energy. And that energy slams into the metal ions you've packed into your star. Strontium for red, barium for green, copper for blue.
So the atoms of the metal are literally soaking up that heat, and it kicks their electrons into a higher energy level.
Precisely. Think of it like an electron jumping up a staircase. It gets to a higher step, but it's unstable. It can't stay there, so it immediately falls back down to where it started.
And when it falls, it has to release that extra energy it absorbed.
It has to, and it releases it as a photon, a tiny particle of light. And because every element has its own unique staircase, its own electron structure, it releases a photon with a very specific wavelength, a specific color.
So you're literally seeing the atomic fingerprint of strontium when you see a red firework.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that's why you get these pure, discrete colors instead of just a big smear of white light.
That is fascinating. But the research we looked at says it's not as simple as just throwing strontium powder in there. To get that really deep saturated red you see in professional shows, you need a secret ingredient.
You do. And that secret ingredient is a chlorine donor.
Chlorine, like from a swimming pool.
Sort of. You add something like Parlon, which is a chlorinated rubber, or even bits of PVC plastic. That chlorine is absolutely essential because in the flame, it helps form a very specific molecule, strontium monochloride, or SRCl.
So wait, the light isn't coming from the strontium atom itself. It's coming from this new molecule that forms in the heat.
Exactly. The light from that SRCl molecule is just spectroscopically better. It hits these wavelengths, 635, 660 nanometers, that our eyes perceive as a much deeper, more intense red than you'd ever get from just burning strontium by itself.
And the research mentioned that to really maximize that effect, it's not just about adding chlorine. You need to control the fire itself.
Right. Research in the Journal of Pyrotechnics found that to get that super high color purity, they were hitting like 93%, you need a negative oxygen balance.
A negative oxygen balance.
Yeah.
So that means the mix has to be fuel-rich. There's more fuel than the oxidizer can burn completely.
Yes, and that's key. That slightly oxygen-starved environment helps protect that fragile SRCl molecule. It gives it more time to form and emit its light before the flame just cools down and the reaction stops. It's this incredible bit of chemistry to create an artistic effect.
Okay, if red is that complicated, I can only imagine what's behind the legendary blee problem. I hear this is the hardest color to make.
It is the absolute Achilles heel of pyrotechnics. Blue comes from copper, specifically copper I chloride, but the massive issue is that QCl just falls apart. It decomposes above 1700 degrees Celsius.
And what happens to the color when it breaks down?
It ruins it. It forms copper oxide, which is red, and copper hydroxide, which is green. So your blue star literally starts polluting itself with red and green light as it burns.
You're fighting your own chemistry in midair.
Yeah, you are. It forces the makers into this tiny, incredibly high-stakes temperature window, somewhere between 1800 and 2100 degrees. And to make it even harder, that blue compound is just notoriously explosive and unstable to begin with.
Wow. So next time you see a pure, clean blue firework, you're not just watching chemistry. You're watching an engineering miracle that was executed perfectly in a tiny 300-degree window. Okay, we've covered the chemistry of the millisecond. Let's zoom out to the 1,300-year history. Fireworks are ancient, and they didn't start as a party trick. They started with a quest for immortality.
It's one of the best origin stories in science. Gunpowder is directly linked to Chinese Taoist alchemists. Their whole goal was to create elixirs for eternal life. You have Wei Boyan, the father of alchemy, writing about a gunpowder-like substance way back in 142 AD. By 300 AD, Yi Gahong had the formula down. They were accidentally making an explosive while trying to live forever.
Talk about an unexpected side effect. So how did we get from toxic immortality potion to backyard firecracker?
Well, that's usually credited to a Chinese monk, Li Tan, around the year 1000. He was the first to pack the stuff into paper tubes just for the effect. But the spiritual connection was there even before that. The Chinese used to throw hollow bamboo stalks into fires because they'd explode with a loud bang.
And that was to ward off evil spirits.
Exactly. The noise was a form of purification.
And that tradition of loud noises and bright lights eventually makes its way across the world and becomes central to an American holiday. When John Adams wrote that Independence Day should have illuminations, he was really just borrowing from an old European royal tradition.
For sure. And that first 4th of July celebration in Philadelphia in 1777 was definitely a loud one. They fired 13 cannons, one for each state, and then launched 13 rockets. It was all about patriotic noise and light.
But here is the historical wow fact that just blows my mind. Those vivid colors we all associate with the 4th of July, the reds, the greens, the blues, they did not exist in 1777.
Not at all. Those early fireworks were just bright white or sort of a goldish color from the sparks. All sound and fury, no color. The colors we think of as essential only became possible in the 1830s when Italian metallurgists figured out how to add metal salts to the mix.
So our tradition of colored fireworks on the 4th is actually 60 years younger than the tradition of just having fireworks on the 4th.
The tradition is older than the technology that now defines it. It's incredible.
It really is. Okay, let's fast forward to today. Fireworks aren't just for parties anymore. They have some really serious, even life-saving jobs.
They absolutely do. In a military context, pyrotechnics are critical. You have parachute illumination flares that can light up a huge area with, up to 145,000 candle power. It's unbelievably bright.
And what about the super high-tech stuff for aircraft?
That would be the infrared countermeasure flare. A fighter jet will deploy one to fool a heat-seeking missile. It burns hotter and brighter than the jet's engine, so the missile goes for the flare instead. It's literally a life-saving pyrotechnic.
And then there's maritime safety, where they're not just a good idea, they're the law.
They are. The International Maritime Regulations, COLREG, they mandate that ships carry distress signals. The red parachute rocket flare is the big one. It can burn for up to 40 seconds at an altitude of 300 meters, and on a clear night, you can see it from up to 40 miles away.
Wow, and we even see them used in places like agriculture and at airports.
Yep, for pest control. They use pyrotechnic noisemakers, they call them shell crackers or screamer shells, to scare birds away from runways. You can't risk a bird strike on a jet engine. And the research shows these things are basically 100% effective at dispersing geese when used correctly.
Finally, let's touch on the art form this has become, pyromusicals. The synchronization we see now, where every burst is perfectly timed to a beat, it feels like magic.
It's pure high-tech automation. The big professional shows use digital firing systems with timing accuracy down to 1/100th of a second, 10 milliseconds, so you can pre-program thousands of shells to launch at the exact moment a certain note hits in the music.
But what about a live performance, like with an orchestra, where the tempo might change a little?
For that, you need a human. They have what's called a pyrotechnic conductor. This person is literally watching the live performance and manually adjusting the firing sequences in real time to match the music. It's an insane amount of pressure.
It's like being an air traffic controller and an orchestra conductor at the same time. Knowing a $100,000 mistake is just a millisecond away. So we've celebrated the science and the art, but now we have to talk about the dark side, the health and environmental cost. Because when all those chemicals fall back to Earth, they don't just disappear.
This is the critical challenge for the industry right now, and the #1 problem is perchlorate contamination. Perchlorate is this toxic salt from the oxidizers. It doesn't break down easily, so it just builds up in the soil and groundwater.
And it has a serious impact on human health.
It does. It directly messes with your thyroid gland. It basically impersonates iodine and blocks your body from absorbing the real iodine it needs. This is why the EPA finally stepped in. In 2020, they set a drinking water limit of just 6 micrograms per liter. It's that dangerous, especially for kids.
And what about the byproducts from making those vibrant colors, like the chlorine we talked about for the deep reds?
Right. When you burn chlorine sources like PVC with organic binders, you create some really nasty stuff. Polychlorinated organics, specifically dioxins and furans. These are known carcinogens. And a Swiss study found something just staggering.
What was that?
On a single day of national celebration, fireworks accounted for 14% of the entire country's annual hexachlorobenzene emissions.
14%.
In one day.
In one day. And that's before you even get to the heavy metals themselves. The emissions are full of things that generate reactive oxygen species in your lungs, causing inflammation. Copper and lead are especially bad.
Okay, so the problem is clear. What's the solution? What does the green pyrotechnics revolution look like? The industry is actually moving pretty fast on this. For the oxidizers, the big replacement is high nitrogen compounds, like something called 5-aminotitrazole or 5-ATZ. They give you similar energy, but they don't need oxygen or chlorine, so no perchlorate and no dioxin risk.
And is there finally a fix for that impossible blue problem?
There is. An emerging alternative is using copper, iodide, made from copper iobate. It gives you that beautiful blue emission, but without the thermal decomposition, without the explosive sensitivity, and without producing dioxins. It's safer and cleaner in every way.
And it sounds like the military is really pushing this green research forward.
They are. The U.S. Army's Picatinny arsenal has already developed perchlorate-free flares, and that research is pushing the whole commercial industry to phase out perchlorate within the next, say, 5 to 10 years. We're already seeing pros, like at Disney, use things like nitrocellulose to get rid of almost all the smoke and soot.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. What are the key things you should take away from this deep dive?
First, just remember that the color you're seeing isn't from a pigment. It's a high-stakes chemistry equation governed by quantum mechanics. It's the light from excited electrons falling back into place.
Second, that classic American 4th of July tradition. It's older than the technology that defines it. The first celebration happened about 60 years before they even figured out how to make colored fireworks, connecting us back to ancient Chinese rituals and European royalty.
And finally, the most important story today is the green revolution. We are actively finding safer, cleaner alternatives like high nitrogen compounds and copper iodide to replace the toxic stuff and fix a serious public health risk.
It's an absolutely incredible 1,300-year story. From an alchemist's accident to a weapon of war to a digitally synced millisecond-precise work of art.
It really shows how science and spectacle have always been tangled up with human culture.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. Given how much we know about the toxicity, and now that we have proven high-tech green alternatives, is the tradition of mass consumer fireworks worth the public health cost? Or should we be pushing to make professional green displays the universal standard? Something to think about the next time you look up.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the secret science of fireworks.
If you enjoyed this trip through chemistry and time, make sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.